Good morning. Addressing a webinar of the National Defence College recently in the capital, the Chief of Defence Staff General Bipin Rawat has given out details about his military reforms that he intends to implement shortly. The key takeaway from his military reform is that the human soldier will be in the lead. Now, this thinking of human soldier in the lead, insofar as the PLA is concerned, is a war-fighting thinking which is 30 years old, frozen in time. Because the war that the PLA is preparing for will not have the soldier in the lead, instead it will have the machines in the lead. And the timeline to accomplish that was recently revised in the plenary session held in Beijing under the chairmanship of General Secretary Xi Jinping, where it was said that the PLA military reforms, instead of being completed in 2030, will now be completed in 2027, 3 years earlier. Now, obviously, this deadline of 2027 is meant for their main adversary, which is the US military. Insofar as the Indian military is concerned, they enjoy a lot of operational advantages. For example, the theatre of war is very well known. Moreover, they are well conversant with the capabilities of the Indian military. Then they are fully aware that the Indian military thinks of a warfare which will have the soldier in the lead. Then they know that the Indian military does not have potent cyber and electronic warfare capabilities, and hence their battle networks will be safe. So, given all these things, in my assessment, it will be safe to say that they will be ready with their machine in the lead, and this is the warfare that I am talking of will be the artificial narrow intelligence. I'll explain this later. They will be ready by 2023, just 3 years from now. When I say 3 years from now, I'm not saying that the Chinese will attack in 2023. What I'm saying is that they will be ready with their war which will incorporate artificial narrow intelligence. Now, when they will attack, if they will attack, at all if they'll attack, this is something the Chinese will decide. But what can be said is two things. Number one, unlike what the Indian military believes, that a war with China will be a border war, it will not be so. It will be a full-scale war of occupation, a decisive war. Number two, India's nuclear deterrence will not play any role, for the reason that whenever there is a conventional overmatch on one side, this deterrence does not work. Now, having said that, let's see the big things what he has said about his military reforms. Now, the first thing which was not known earlier, which General Rawat told us recently in this webinar, is that in September 2020, so recently, in the Integrated Defence Headquarters which he heads, he has created a transformation division. Now, obviously, this division is meant to implement his military reforms, and this presupposes that the military reforms already have got the clearance from the government of India to go ahead and do these reforms. Now he says India has long land borders, it has 2 seaboards. Hence, what he intends to do is create 2 integrated theatre commands. One integrated command against China and the second one against Pakistan. Both of them will have the human soldier in the lead. Now, as far as their organization is concerned, structures are concerned, that will depend on 3 factors, which is the threat, the geography, and the role and tasks. Then he intends to have a maritime theatre command for the 2 seaboards. Then he wants to create a joint air defense command, which he also calls an aerospace theatre command. Now, aerospace primarily means that he is talking of clubbing the space and the air together. And what we do with our satellites is nothing more than communications. So he is referring to the communications. So essentially it remains a joint air defense command. Now there is already a lot of resistance from within the Indian Air Force. There are a lot of retired Air Force officers who've been writing that the Air Headquarters was not consulted by the CDS when he decided on this Joint Air Defense Command. And they are against this Joint Air Defense Command, and rightly so, for the reason that the Indian Air Force has very limited combat capabilities. It has only 30 combat squadrons. The creation of this Air Defense Command, instead of keeping those 30 combat squadrons united, will divide them, and that cannot be good. Now, be as it may, General Rawat will go ahead with this, and he's also decided to have joint training for the Air Force, Army and Navy, and he is already talking of some joint logistics where he wants to involve the civilian infrastructure. This is broadly his plan of the transformation which will be done under this division. Now, I have 4 takeaways from this. My first takeaway is that General Rawat is only thinking of 3 physical battlefields: the battlefield of land, air and sea. In other words, his campaign, his battle space, which will only comprise 3 battlefields, nothing more than that. My second takeaway is he believes that a 2-front war thinking is valid and it is viable. And rightly so, because he believes that he will be fighting a similar war on both the sides, because he has put the human soldier in the lead on both the sides, which of course I will explain later. This is not workable. Now, the third my takeaway is he believes that a possibility of a war with China is low. When I say low, at best he is looking at a border war, nothing more than that. Because in their thinking, in the thinking of the Indian Army and the military, it is that the PLA will not be able to take heavy casualties if it wants to go for a war of occupation. Again, this is a wrong thinking. As I said, what we should be looking at, and I'll explain later, we should be looking at a war of occupation, a full-scale war. And the fourth thing, of course, is he is looking at networking all the assets, the sensors, the shooters and the command post, because as we already know that the fiber optic cables are being laid. A project was cleared by the Government of India. Over the next 3 years, this will be done in our areas, our border areas with China, both in Ladakh as well as in Arunachal Pradesh and the central sector. This is being done. Then obviously we are looking at the traditional networks, which comprise of the fiber optic cables, wireless communications, and then we have the electronic communication through the satellites. So this is what we are looking at. So these are my takeaways. Now let's turn to the PLA. What is the PLA doing? So you see, PLA, starting from 1991, after the Gulf War, the US led war against Iraq, it has been focused on what it calls the information warfare, and it still continues. What is this information warfare? This is one warfare that they are focused on. This warfare, first of all, in this warfare, they do not see only 3 battlefields. They see the 3 physical battlefields, which is of land, air and sea, and they also consider 3 virtual battlefields of cyber, space and electromagnetic spectrum. In other words, they consider 6 battlefields, 3 physical, 3 virtual, comprising their battle space or the campaign outcome. It will be determined in this. Now, it is very obvious that against the Indian military, the virtual battlefields, since the Indian military does not even have much of a presence there, they will not be contested, they will not be congested. So there is a great likelihood or a great possibility that the PLA will dominate there. And what does it get by dominating there? Well, it gets to do information denial to the Indian side and information dominance for itself. Now, why is information important? Because a campaign, a war is about information. If you deny information from one headquarters to another, whatever the level of war, how does the war go? The war is over. So, under the 2015 reforms, the PLA has created two unique organizations. One is called the Strategic Support Force, which reports directly to the CMC, the Central Military Commission, headed by the chairman Xi Jinping. And it has under it cyberspace, electronic warfare, and of course psychological warfare. And then the second organization called the Rocket Force, again reporting directly to the CMC, has their entire formidable plethora of ballistic, cruise and now hypersonic missiles. So it is with these assets that it has, the combined asset of Strategic Support Force and Rocket Force, that it will do the information denial, which means that it will be able to dominate the entire electromagnetic spectrum against an adversary which has not given much prominence to this. In other words, there will be an information denial. That's a big negative for the Indian side, and this is a non-contact thing. Now, the second thing what they have been doing since 2012 for the last 8 years is that they are looking at how to get the machines in the lead. So basically, it is a journey from automation to autonomy. What is autonomy? Autonomy basically equates with intelligence. The more a machine is intelligent, how does a machine become intelligent? The machine learns. It is made to learn, and after it has learnt, then it can think also, and it can then do self-correction also. So it becomes intelligent in a particular area, in a particular task. It's very commonplace that an intelligent machine is known to perform, if not equal, much far better than the humans in terms of precision, in terms of faster results and better results. So that is the intelligence part, and the more a machine becomes intelligent, the more freedom or autonomy it has. But you see, we have to understand this journey from automation to autonomy really has 4 steps that should be clearly understood. The first is the automation, we say. What is automation? Automation is that there are certain repetitive tasks. We employ, let's say, in our production capabilities, in our defense production, ordnance factories, we have labor working there. They are bringing out ammunition. So a machine does a task repetitively. It is given a simple task and it does it repetitively. That is automation. Simple. Nothing more than that. For example, as far as the PLA is concerned, all their infrastructure, defense infrastructure, industrial infrastructure is mostly automated. Now, the second is what is called the prescriptive rules autonomy. Now, what is this prescriptive rules autonomy? In this, the human being gives the task, and he also gives the prescriptive rules how to accomplish the task. And the machine follows the rules in toto without any deviation. In other words, the output of the machine is exactly the input put into it. So strictly speaking, the machine does not become intelligent. But because the definition of artificial intelligence has become so loose now that people tend to speak of this prescriptive rule machine also as an artificial intelligence enabled machine. Now, this is what we see a lot in our day-to-day existence today. It has already come in a big way. And this is about human-machine combat teaming. For example, everybody is familiar with drones, combat drones. We recently saw the Turkish drone being used by Azerbaijan forces and busting the Armenian tanks. This is a recent thing. So it's very exciting. It sounds great. But you see, at the end of the day, what is it about? It is about an operator who's sitting on the ground, who's using a traditional network to communicate with the drone. When I say traditional network, I've already explained what it is. Basically, fiber optic cables, wireless communications, and then satellite communication, all this is being used to communicate. And exactly what the drone is expected to do is being told by the reporter. So it's a prescriptive rule, artificial enabled drone. Similarly, there can be swarms of it, which PLA and so many other, the Russians and the US, they have demonstrated. Now the basic thing in this is that the drones per se are not intelligent. The intelligence lies with the operator. It is the operator who through the traditional network is passing the instructions, and all the drones, let's say 10, 20 of them, they all can collectively do a homogeneous drone swarm can do a task. It can be a task of jamming, it can be a task of area dominance in terms of intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, or it can be attack. All this can be done through this. Another example is this F-35, the Americans. For example, it is widely accepted that the F-35 of the Americans and the J-20 of the Chinese is roughly comparable. Now, if this F-35 is to have 2 or 3 unarmed wingmen, basically the pilot is there, he's got the unarmed wingmen. Pilot is giving the instructions to the wingman. So he can say, all right, wingman number 1, you go up, you do the active radar, I'll go silent. Or he can say to the other, okay, wingman 2, you go and fire your missile. So in other words, all the directions, all the instructions are being given. What do you get out of this? What you get out of it is that the exchange ratio becomes a lot. What an ordinary F-35 would do against a J-20, now the F-35 can throw more ordnance, can do more jobs, because the exchange ratio has gone up because of the unmanned but armed wingmen. So this is what it is. So this is all looks very exciting, and there are a lot of analysts here in our country who've been writing, retired generals, that look, if we get the drones like this, and we are getting some drones from outside also, and we are making some of our own also, they are saying that this will change the game. It will be a game changer. Actually, it won't. Nothing will change at all, because it is just a technology you've gotten. You see, and that technology will not change your character of war or how the war is to be fought. It's just a force multiplier. What will change is, now I'm coming to that, which is the third kind, which is the real artificial intelligence, and we call it the artificial narrow intelligence. Now in artificial narrow intelligence, the task is given by the human, and after that the human has no role. The only role the human has is that if the mission is not going well, the human can end or prematurely the human can push the button, emergency button, and end the task, the mission. So after having given the task, the intelligent machine then decides for itself, what are my options now? Then decides what is the best course of action. What should I do to accomplish that task? You see, so an intelligent machine will go, for example, we fire a missile. It's a fire and forget missile. Accurate missile reaches the target, bang. But if it is an intelligent missile, so it goes there, close to the target, then realizes that there is a SAM battery there, realizes that something else is there that the enemy has put. So I should not attack from the left, I should attack from the right. So it can take on its own the decisions to accomplish that task. So this is what artificial narrow intelligence is about. But if somebody is thinking that I am talking Terminators, I am not. Because Terminator is the next step which nobody really is looking at right now, or nobody is claiming that they are doing that, and that is the artificial general intelligence, which basically means that the machine decides the task itself also it wants to do, and then goes and does the task, which is not that anybody would want, because the machine may just get up one day and say, all right, I'll assassinate so and so leader, and just goes and decides and knows best how to assassinate and assassinates the leader and creates chaos. I'm just giving an example. So nobody is looking at terminators. So at best, what is being looked at is artificial narrow intelligence. Now, this is what I believe by 2023 they will accomplish. So what they would have accomplished with this is that now we are looking at let's say the missiles, a swarm of missiles, a swarm of drones, drones in the air, drones under sea, where they can communicate with one another. After having got the task, they are intelligent. All the individual drones, instead of being dumb and following, having a smart chip, like in the prescriptive rules, they can talk to one another. They'll talk to one another, decide, all right, I'll go from the left, you go from the right. So they are intelligent. Similarly, on the ground, how this will look is, there will be, for example, the Chinese have their combined armed brigades. We know, and their lowest unit is the combined armed battalions. Now we get reports that they are doing exercises. You see, by about 2022, we will start getting reports that the unmanned systems are more than the human beings in the combined armed brigades. And that is what is called the battle Internet of Things. And that is where the artificial narrow intelligence comes in. Each system will be able to communicate with one another. Human beings is not required there. And they will decide how to accomplish a particular mission, and they'll go and do it. So when each system becomes intelligent, then obviously the network, or how they communicate with one another, also becomes intelligent. Now, I'm not going in the details how the battle networks become intelligent. I'm just giving a broad view that this is what we should be looking at. By 2022, a lot of reports coming in of their unmanned system, of their robos. You see, basically with artificial narrow intelligence, we will see ubiquitous unmanned systems, machines and drones and robots. This is what we will see. Very few human beings. And this is round the corner. This is what will happen. So in a case like this, what does it look like? The human being actually, after having given the task, can be over the loop. He need not remain in the loop any longer. He is just over the loop to push the emergency button if required. Then they can do, an intelligent swarm can do heterogeneous tasks also. For example, an Internet of Things in a battlefield on the front line, on the land battlefield, the artillery gun can do something, the tank can do something else. You see, the normal whatever the drills are, except that the human being is not there and they are communicating with one another with intelligent battle networks. So they can do all that, they can talk to one another. So I am talking of machines communicating with one another, human beings less on the battlefield, or rather very few humans on the battlefield. We are talking of intelligent weapons, intelligent unmanned system, intelligent drones, intelligent networks. This is all that we are talking of. And insofar as they are concerned, the PLA is concerned, they will be very clear that because India is not, the Indian military is not the American military, the US military, they do not have the potent cyber and electronic warfare capabilities. So they will be happy perhaps with their traditional networks. They don't have to worry too much about the traditional networks and what do we do, what are our alternatives. They don't have to worry about that at all. So in other words, when you see all this, all over, you see unmanned systems which can communicate, work, do a mission, it becomes very obvious that the war concepts will change. When I say war concept, how the campaign is to be fought, what will happen in cyber, what will happen in space, what will happen on the land, what will happen under sea, everything will change. There will be new war concept. And then at the tactical level, what is called the tactics, techniques and procedures, they will all change. When all this will change, it becomes very clear. Based on this, first of all, our organizations will change. How can we decide today that a theatre command is the best organization for a war like this, or anything close to this that we have to get? We cannot decide today. We can only decide if first of all we understand that this is not a technology which somebody will give us like a drone. This is a technology which will involve the disruptive technologies, 12 of them, to make the mission sets. How do we use the big data? How do we use the IoT? How do we use the clouds? How do we use the 5G? How do we use the autonomous networks? You see, all these things will come into play. So this is something that has to be incubated in the country. Nobody will give this technology to us. And this is best done because it has to suit our genius, our environment. We have to involve our industry in this. We have to involve our IIT on this. So the first step becomes very clear that these reforms that General Rawat is trying to implement are completely unsuitable to match a war where the machine will be in the lead. They have to stop because we'll end up spending so much of money on them. You see that it's completely counterproductive. And also what becomes clear is that this two-front war, which all our retired senior officers have been, advocating or supporting, is complete baloney. How do you have a two-front war if there is one front which is fighting with machines in the lead and the other front is fighting the way we fight, with humans in the lead? This is undoable. This cannot happen. It's unviable. So you see, this is why I say that all the right thinking people have to sit down and first of all, General Rawat, let's be very honest, for the last 3 decades, when I say that it's frozen in time, was the time that he's been doing counter-terror operation. He's perhaps not kept pace with how the war has changed. And today we are in a situation that Ladakh is on us. The Chinese are already there. Our relations will not improve with the Chinese. So we have to build up our strength. We have to understand the war, what it is. Thank you so much.